Hi guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. So I'm super excited to be doing my next episode on the show called Echo. This is part of the Marvel franchise. And so I didn't watch everything in order. I kind of followed the timeline for the movies, but with the TV shows I kind of jumped around based on what I was interested in watching. Like I did try to give the WandaVision TV show a shot, but I wasn't really into the black and white I Love Lucy and Bewitched style of like doing the TV show, and so that wasn't something that I have watched beyond like the first 10 minutes of that series. But with Echo, I really love that they are introducing a completely deaf character into the Marvel universe. So this is someone who can't hear, and they're signing as their primary form of communication or their only form of communication. Obviously, she reads lips as well, but she communicates using ASL. Um, I have, at the time of doing this recording, I have already seen Hawkeye, but at the time that I watched the actual TV show Echo, I had not seen the TV show. From watching Hawkeye, I realized that there were a lot of scenes that were covered in Echo, and so we're kind of re-seeing the same thing in Echo, and so that bothers me a little bit. I would have liked if they had given us like fresher content and maybe more episodes, but I think for a starting point, this was a good introduction to the character Echo. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. Alright, so let's start with our 5 key points of the season. So for our first point, Maya's mother is killed in a car crash. And so we have this scene where we see the extended family, they're kind of like camping in the background. The daughters, Bonnie and Maya, are standing in the tent, and so we see them making like animal figures or whatever. And we know that Maya is really close with her cousin Bonnie. And we see this scene where it's just Maya with her family, her mom and her dad, and she wanted something from the store, and so her mother was like, okay, we don't have any, we'll have to go and get it. And just before the grandma left, she saw a crow, so this meant something bad was going to happen. And so then we see the mom and the daughter driving to go somewhere. They are driving, Maya's trying to talk to her mother is kind of like looking away, not really watching the road, and then she gets hit by this truck. And so what happens is Maya's leg is amputated, her mother has died. Her grandmother, Shula, if I'm saying that name correctly, she is really grieving the loss of her daughter, and she's just not really happy about everything that has happened, because what we learn is that her father, William, is kind of connected to these bad people, and so the mother is really mad that her daughter has married into this family, and she blames William for her daughter dying. And the person that they are involved with is this man called Fifth. He is also called Kingpin, and so we just really see that family being driven apart, with Maya and her father William going off to New York, and then the extended family staying in that location of where they live. Going into my second key point, Maya's father is killed. We have Fist or Kingpin really being introduced at this point. He is considered to be an uncle to her, and he is really taking care of her and making sure that she is provided for. We do see this flashback scene of one, her doing karate classes and him being there. But there's also this other scene that stuck out to me, and it's basically of Fish seeing her interacting with this street vendor. So I think Maya's coming from school or something like that, and there's this guy selling ice cream, and she's obviously struggling to communicate with him in her language. He doesn't understand her, and he's really rude to her, and so she's basically not able to get ice cream. And so Fish sees all of this happening, and he's like this big, huge guy. His shoulders, my sister and I, when we were watching the show, we weren't sure if the actor was really that big, but I think this is obviously like padding to make him seem more imposing. And so Fish sees all of this, and he says, hey, give me a second, and he goes to talk to the guy, and he actually ends up beating him up. And so he beats him up until the guy can barely stand. His white suit is bloody, and he ends up calling his assistant and saying, hey, bring me another suit, I don't want Maya to see me like this. And then we end up seeing Maya actually observing everything, and what we're supposed to think is going to happen is that she's going to be scared and run away. But Maya actually runs up to him and starts kicking the guy as well. And so this is just kind of more proof that Maya was supposed to be this person that she is, because she has a natural inclination to beat people up and hurt people. And so we see that this is not something that she was 100% trained and made into. She already had these behaviors and habits to react to things in this way. And so what this leads to is Maya becoming more officially trained to be a killer, to be an asset to Fisk and his operation, and this is a way for her to channel all of her rage. And so we see this scene where she's in this motorcycle shop, she's surrounded by cops, and then she just revs up this motorcycle and it causes all this damage, but then she gets off the hook because Fisk is her uncle and owns the city. And so we just see that Maya is really like this wild card. She does whatever she wants and she doesn't really think about the consequences of anything. What we see happening later on is that we see Maya kind of going to where her dad works. She sees that they're being attacked by this person who is very flexible. They're doing flips and all of that stuff. They're attacking everyone, killing them, and then we see that she is able to get to her dad, but her dad is dying, and she ends up fighting with this guy, and she like barely escapes or whatever. And what we get from that is that her dad is killed, and he's killed by this masked person who she is gonna try to hunt down. Going into my third key point, Maya attacks Fisk and returns home. So she somehow finds out, and I know from watching Hawkeye how she found out. I can't recall if this scene is actually played in Echo, but she finds out that Fisk was responsible for her dad getting killed, and she ends up shooting him, and we actually don't see where she shoots him. The camera kind of pans off and like goes above them, and we just hear the gunshot. And then we see her fleeing back to her hometown of Tamaha, and she is staying there while she recovers from kind of basically starting this war of attacking Fisk. And so she ends up staying at her family's old house. It has been completely abandoned basically by the family. It's not in disarray or anything like that. It's actually been very preserved to how it was when everything happened with her mother. And so she's able to stay there, and she reunites with a cousin of hers called Biscuit, and she is able to stay at the house. Obviously nobody is there, and so it's just her at that property. And I think Biscuit's her cousin is like doing errands and stuff like that, and so they run into each other, they get reacquainted, and she's kind of very bossy to him, and she's getting him to do these little things for her. And so we know that Biscuits is very impressionable. He's not really thinking too much or resisting too much what she wants him to do. And so obviously I feel bad for him that he was put in this position, because Maya is this ruthless person. She doesn't really seem to be thinking about anybody else. And so I have it in my notes that she just seems really selfish, and she uses people, and she doesn't care about the compromising positions that she puts them in. And so I actually really did not like Maya for most of this season. Even though I understood kind of like why she was the way she was, she just wasn't likable to me. And so when she comes back to Tamaha, she doesn't seek out her grandmother because she feels abandoned by her, and then she also doesn't reach out to Bonnie for whatever reason. And so we learned that Bonnie actually did try to reach out and stay in touch with her, but for whatever reason, Maya just kind of threw away that relationship. We also know that Maya has come to Tamaha specifically because she wants to retaliate against Fisk's people and kind of keep them from coming after her. And she wants to blow up a specific train car on a train that her uncle is kind of responsible for. And he doesn't want to go along with this, but she does this anyway. And she ropes Biscuits into helping her. And so she ends up planting a bomb basically in a specific train car, and it goes to Kingpin's people, and it basically takes them out because it is a bomb and it explodes. And so she is basically sending the message that they can't mess with her. She wants to be the Kingpin. She wants to take over everything that Fisk is responsible for, and she's doing all of this with the assumption that she has killed him, that he is dead. And so going into my fourth point, Maya and Fisk reunite. So everyone is basically retaliating against Maya for what she did to Fisk. We learn that she quickly goes to her Uncle Henry's skating rink, and she's trying to get him involved in the things that she wants to do, which leads up to her blowing up that train car. And so she is reunited kind of with this guy named Vicky, who works for her Uncle Henry, and he knows that this is the person that they're looking for, and so he makes contact with those people, and he brings these bad guys basically to the skating rink in exchange for money. So this leads to Maya, Bonnie, and Henry being kidnapped, and then I think Vicky is eventually shot, and then his girlfriend is trying to run away or whatever, but she gets caught as well. And so we have Maya and Bonnie being locked in a room. Bonnie actually came to the skating rink at a bad moment, and then she was just never able to leave because they realized that she knew that something bad was happening because Uncle Henry was signing to her, and I think one of the ladies peeped it, and so they brought her back in after she was able to leave, and she's locked in a room with Maya, and they're kind of reunited for the first time, and so they're forced to kind of work out their stuff in order to be able to escape the room. They pretend to be fighting or whatever. The women have to come and stop them, and then Bonnie is able to be taken out of the room because Maya headbutts her, and then Maya is just trapped in the room by herself. And so Maya is able to kind of like create a weapon from all of the things that are in that storage room where she is being held, and she's able to take out the lights, and that forces one of the women to come in and kind of see what's going on, and then she's able to break out, and then she ends up attacking all of the goons who are there at the skating rink to basically capture her. She does do a lot of damage, but then at think Bonnie or somebody like that is threatened at gunpoint, and so she has to give up, and she's captured, she's tied up. And so just as the guys are about to kill them, Fish calls at the last minute, and he basically tells them to back off. And this is when she realizes that Fish is still alive, and so he shows up to her old home. He has a patch over his eye, and he basically wants to continue his relationship with her, and he ends up having his goons force contacts into her eyes. And what the contacts are basically an AI system or whatever that is basically signing whatever he is saying to her. And so he makes it clear that he wants her to come back to New York City with him and kind of continue to be his protege and take over the company. And so what we have happening is that Fish is really trying to woo her. He is bringing her cookies, he's bringing her wine and stuff like that. He brings her to his penthouse. He's telling her about his abusive dad and how his dad used to beat on his mother, and then he had to use a knife to stab his dad. And so he pulls out that same knife and he gives her the opportunity or the chance to kill him. She doesn't take it, but he's fully expecting her to want to come back to New York with him. And so we have this moment where Maya ends up going to her grandmother, and she's telling her about these different visions that she's having. So throughout the season, we see these visions of things that have happened in the past, and we see these Choctaw people who are like in a cave and they're doing different things, they're having superpowers, that sort of thing, and she doesn't really know what all of it means. And so she goes to her grandmother and she tells her about this, and her grandmother reveals that she had seen similar vision when she was giving birth to her daughter, Maya's mother. And so she explains that Maya now has the gift of echo. And going into my fifth point, Maya gets her powers. And so after rejecting Fish's offer to go back to New York with him, we see Fish reacting really badly to this. He's on his private jet, he's waiting for her, he gets the call that she's not coming, and he's really pissed off. And so we see this scene where Maya is on her motorcycle and she's leaving town. We have no idea where she's going, and she stops at this diner. We do see that while this is happening, Fish, as I mentioned, is not reacting well to this, and he ends up going to this place where her grandmother works because there's a powwow that's supposed to be happening around that same time. And so the grandmother doesn't know who Fish is, and so she's just chatting it up with him, giving him all of this information, and he is obviously preparing to kidnap her and use her as bait or blackmail to get Maya to fall in line. And so we see Maya at this diner getting a text or a call that her grandmother and Bonnie haven't shown up for something, and so she knows right away that something is wrong. Around the same time, we see a flashback of Maya interacting with her mother, and she is basically in the woods watching the birds, and there's this one specific bird who like means a great deal to their people, and she ends up hitting it with a rock, and she wounds it, and so she takes it to her mother because she wants her mother to fix it. Her mother has the gift of echo, and so she's able to fix the bird, but we see that her mother is having to tell her like, hey, we don't do this, this bird is very important to our culture, we don't hurt living things. And so again, this moment points to Maya's natural instinct to hurt things, to wound things, because she is just very not understanding the value of the people around her and the things around her. We even see the scene where she goes to the house that her grandmother used to live in, and after she had this conversation with her grandmother starts making her like this warrior outfit. And so when she goes to the house, she sees that outfit kind of like finally put together or whatever, and she ends up interacting with her mother's ghost, who explains the family history to her. And she is telling Maya that she basically needs to heal all the wounds that she had, repair the relationships that are damaged and that sort of thing. And then we see her mother kind of strengthening the powers that she already had. And so what Maya is able to do is go to that powwow for the Choctaw tribe, and she is able to take on all of the bad guys to free her grandmother and free Bonnie. And so when she is interacting with Fist, or when she is confronting Fist to free those people, she is there with all of the warrior female ancestors in power and strength behind her, and she is able to give that strength to her grandmother and to Bonnie, and so they're able to take out Fist's people. They obviously have help from Biscuits and Uncle Henry as well, but she's able to save her family and she's able to reunite with them. And so we see that when she was fighting Fist's people, she was no longer wearing that traditional black leather outfit that she was wearing. She's wearing the outfit that her grandmother made for her, and so we see that she's going to embrace the ways of her people. And that is where the season ends. To wrap up this episode, I really like seeing the story of the Choctaw tribe. I wasn't really sure what to expect with Echo because, one, I hadn't seen Hawkeye at this point, and then I had not been introduced to Echo in any other way. I'm not a fan of the comics. I don't read the comics. I did used to read comics, but it was just Archie comics, and so anyway, I had no idea what I was getting into with this series. It was definitely a very good watch. My only complaint is that it was very, very short, so I didn't really like that part of it. And then it didn't have the usual Marvel humor that we see in those Marvel movies and TV shows. And so I was just very surprised that it's kind of like a completely different vibe. And so in comparison to Hawkeye, Hawkeye was more up my alley because it was just the format or whatever that I was used to. And this just kind of was really short and just really to the point, but it didn't have the things that makes Marvel Marvel. The one other complaint that I have is that I really wish that they made more of an effort to connect Echo to the rest of the Marvel universe, like the traditional Marvel universe. I know that they're moving into their new phase, but that was just the one thing that just didn't really connect for me because I just didn't really understand how Echo was important in the Marvel universe. And so, yeah, with all that being said, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.